Interested in sex? What it's like to be a professional escort? Want to hear some cool and funny stories that come out of Miss Steph Raw's bedroom? Of course you do. Welcome to Northern Vibe. Thanks for tuning in. If we've never met, I'm Matt Maloney, host and founder of Northern Vibe. Northern Vibe believes in elevating the obscure. We believe in exposing excellence. We believe in cultivating curiosity. We believe in acknowledging achievement and shining a light on uniqueness. This, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a very unique interview tonight. Glad you've tuned in. Like and share. We engage with open conversations with those who have hidden talents, abilities, and accomplishments. And I'm speaking to a very accomplished lady tonight. We seek to understand interesting and informed people, comprehend and appreciate the motivation. So listen in, eavesdrop. Everybody wants to grow. Northern Vibe itself is growing, but we really need your help to keep up momentum. Please like and share. We're just under 30,000 for reach. I'm really keen to break that 30,000 mark, but we need your help to do that. Also, if you haven't already done so, please follow Northern Vibe. Now, we're getting some really interesting locations where people are listening from. So please ask questions tonight. I'll be fielding any questions, anything you've got to ask, put it on, I'll throw it out. Also, tell us where you're listening from. And a big hello to Mossman. Great to see you out there. We're getting some great suggestions from the comments page, so please keep them coming. This includes suggestions for guests. So if you're interested in coming on Northern Vibe, contact me through the Facebook page. I'll be doing a brief bio for my guest tonight, but first, this week's mention in dispatches. The guest always gets to choose the charity of their choice, and my excellent guest tonight has chosen Yaps, one of our more popular ones. I'll just pull this right up. So she's chosen Yaps, and if you are keen to do anything to support them, just jump on the Facebook page there. That's yaps.org.au, and it explains the sorts of things that you can do to assist Yaps there. So about Steph. Steph is Cairns' most unabashed professional escort. Professional escort. Excellent. Well, she's excellent as well. I'm getting my adjectives all tied up here. She takes great pride in her work. Steph describes herself as a people person, and having worked for 15 years in customer service orientated roles, she found transitioning into an escort a natural progression for her. She's also an unashamed crazy cat woman, in the sense that she's a woman who's crazy about cats. So Steph, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me to speak.
No. I'm
very excited. I have so much to say on the topic.
And I tell you, we want to listen. But before we dive right in that, tell us about the human side of you. Tell us about your cats.
I've got 2 cats, Miso and Kimchi, and I honestly don't know what to say. I think that I have this crazy affinity for feline energy, and I've always been cat crazy. I've only got 2, but I will get more one day. And they're beautiful. They're my boys.
Okay. All right. And mate, you've just recently purchased a house too. That's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's insane. It's beautiful. I still wake up and have to pinch myself. Yeah, it's a real dream come true.
Yeah, but moving is such a pain in the backside. It's a kill me now. Like, having been in the job, I have lost count of the amount of times I've moved. So I just don't know. Mate,
it's a slow setup for me. I decided I wanted to kind of like get a little bit bougie and hire a stylist. So I'm sort of like slowly furnishing it, but it's okay. It's good. It's coming along, but it wasn't actually too hectic. It's just all the little bits and pieces. I think it's not the big pieces of furniture, it's all the little things that you need to find a new home for. So I'll admit I've got 2 exclusively messy rooms.
Yeah. Well, we've all got that little bit of compartmentalization, and I promise not to tell Jordan Peterson that you've got a room that needs cleaning.
It'll be clean one day.
You're a bit of a firecracker, aren't you? Tell me about your bungee jumping.
was entirely spontaneous. I actually got contacted by another working girl. So I didn't know this about escorting, but you can tour. So you can go to different cities and then you're like the new face on the block kind of thing. So a girl was touring from Sydney and she actually hit me up and said, hey, did you want to connect? I'm going bungee jumping in the morning if you want to join me. And I was like, shit, yeah. It was so much fun. I would say I didn't actually have any time to process what I had just agreed to. I think it was the night before, and then woke up and went bungee jumping at 10 a.m. the next day. So it wasn't until I sort of walked up to the top and looked down and went, oh my God, what am I doing? But it was a really good start to the day, let's say. And as well, I've been wanting to connect with other working girls. I guess I'm on a mission. I want to find other women who are feeling empowered and actually slaying it, who don't come from a history of a lot of trauma. So I was really looking forward to kind of meeting someone and sort of sussing them out a little bit. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is like, because obviously for the listeners out there, you know, we've been chatting before this, and I always research my guests. Many of my, it's a bit of a standard joke. You know, a lot of my listeners ask, you know, do you actually kind of do any research on your people? Do you? And it's like, yes, I do. And I can indicate that you're a bit of a creative. So you've got a bit of a creative side to yourself as well. You kind of like photography and you also blog.
Yeah, I've always been, that's just been my nature since I was a child. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be an author and a journalist, or a model slash actress. You know, I had all these aspirations, and funnily enough, where I'm at in my life right now, escorting has opened up this creative channel where I can be a model, even though my legs are so short. I'm 5'2". And I can be the exhibitionist I always wanted to be. I get to be the public speaker, the creative. So I do have a lot, which is coursing through my veins, creatively speaking right now. So it's just epic to write about it, speak about it, and just be really open about me, my life. I've always been an open book.
So, and I've got your blog up there now. It's Steffi Raw. So that's STEPHYRAW.com. And look, it's a good read. I got to say, I kind of, you know, I for what it's worth, I really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
Tell us about you. You know, where you're from. What do you like doing?
So I moved up from Melbourne nearly 4 years ago, actually. And I think I'm pretty simple. I like coffee. I like margaritas. I like to lie in the sun. I like to hang out with good people. I like to hang out with my cats. They're genuinely like the best thing in the world. So crazy. I guess now as well that I am doing what I'm doing, I love collaborating with other people. I mean, I had a photo shoot today, and this is just standard now, just connecting with people. Hey, you want to do a photo shoot? Want to come on my podcast? And yeah, it feels like right now life is quite a playground, and I'm kind of just going with the flow and enjoying making new connections and having new experiences.
Well, that is really, really cool. And if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to put them up there, because I'm happy to put them to Steph. But you used to work as a colon hydrotherapist.
I know, that's for sure my the most random thing on my resume. What even to say about that? Okay, it's the whole thing. I was vegan for 7 years, and not your typical vegan, but your raw vegan who was obsessed with colon cleansing, juice fasting, and dry skin brushing and yoga and meditating. And it was like a very puritanical path that I was on. And so I found myself caught up in all these like self-care practices, which included colon cleansing. And genuinely, when that job came to me, it was like so in alignment, so exciting for me. the reality of the job obviously is not glamorous. I don't think I stayed there for very long because I got the job, I think maybe in like January, and then I started escorting in April because I was made redundant from said job as a result of COVID. And I was pretty happy to move on. After my 3 or 4 month stint. But you know what? It was just like any other customer service role where you are very, very intimately acquainted with your client. And, you know, like any role that I've done in the past, whether it be personal training or yoga teaching or escorting, you become very close to people. So I still really value the people I met and pumped their butts full of water with in that time. Literally.
Oh, I've never had to. But hey, look, we've already got, man, we're getting some love on Facebook here. We've had a couple of chaps indicate that they're crazy cats. I've also got Mel Goal. Hey, great to see you, Mel. She's made a really cool comment. She's indicated that you should look up a Nikki Rainbow Envy. She's in Insta and TikTok. And both great platforms and strong advocates and educators.
Writing it down.
Okay, so
Nikki Rainbow Envy, sweet.
Yep.
Thank you.
No worries, and that'll be obviously on our feed too. And I've had Mr. Carroll ask, do you like the big cats? Because he lives up in the Tableland, and they've had some reports up there of some like really big cats, perhaps panthers or escape stuff, you know, up there. So
oh my God, yeah, but they would tear my face off. I mean, I would love to see one, but my cats scare me less, so I'm cool with those.
Yeah, and I know we've had reports of yowies and stuff up there too, and I'd really love to get some people on from the yowie mob.
I don't even know what a yowie is. I thought I'm confused.
Yowie, it's kind of like Australia's Bigfoot. That's an oversimplification. It's more linked with Indigenous, Australian Indigenous stuff, but it's same concept, slightly different creature, and it's kind of cool that way. All right, cousin, I'm not going to say that. My cousin's on. He's just said something rude that I can't repeat. But look, a couple of other careers there. Well, not really rude, actually. Just indicates about he's knows some people that could probably do with a good clean out. But what other careers have you tried and complicated? Because you did mention a few other professions there.
Yeah, I mean, like I've always been quite entrepreneurial and always wanted to work for myself. I guess I really am not very good at taking authority, no, it's not even that. It's on like a deep soul level. I'm just not inspired when I'm working for somebody else's dream. So all through my 20s, I really tried to pursue my own career, and it was usually like in the fitness industry, so personal training and teaching yoga. So I set up a few businesses and always did that, but then, you know, struggled to pay the bills. So I'd go and get a job for a couple of months. But like, I've actually never worked a full-time job for more than like 3 months. Like it literally kills me. I can't. So I'm a very sensitive individual, and I just had to find a way to make it work where I can work, like have my own agency and a lifestyle that affords me good health. So yeah, anyway, what other jobs? I mean, a lot of retail, you know, retail and fitness stuff primarily. Nothing, I mean, the colon hydrotherapy and escorting takes the cake.
Yeah, but was there anything specific that led you into escorting? Like, was there?
Well, I met a girl. She was doing it, and in all honesty, I found out what she was making, and I just had a lot of questions. How do you feel? How does it go down? How do you advertise? And I guess the main thing for me was, how does it feel? Could I do this? And she really was quite chill and comfortable to talk about it. So I just thought, you know what? I'm going to make an ad, and worst case scenario is I just never do it again if it doesn't feel good. It felt good. And I basically in a very short space of time, just learned the ropes. I just learned what to look out for, how to run my business, learned a few lessons along the way, obviously, but I have a pretty good screening process and good judge of character. So I've been very discerning in my process. Unfortunately, I haven't had any instances that have put me off of the industry in the slightest.
Well, that's kind of reassuring, actually, because as you know, I'm just coming out of the police, and I kind of, I totally respect what you do. It's legal and all that sort of stuff, but the people I know working in that industry haven't shared that journey. It's kind of this. It's been.
No, I find it very hard to relate to other escort stories. This girl that I met with and we went bungee jumping, I felt quite disheartened when we did connect because I realized where she was coming from and I couldn't really relate. But look, all through my 20s, I mean, when I was young, I was a party girl, and I just have always been so open-minded, and I've just connected with people from all walks of life. Like, it doesn't matter who it is. I get people, and I think there's just something to that. I've always been supremely open-minded and also highly sexual and very comfortable about that. So bringing that all together, and being at the mature age of 31, I was ready to do this, and it was going to be coming from a place of integrity. But if I was younger, I know it would have been a very different and more dangerous profession for me.
Well, that leads on to a rather obvious observation. You like your work.
I do like my work. I do. I have really wonderful clients, regular clients, which is, again, Miso's coming in. Maybe we'll get to meet him.
That's okay. We're pro cat.
Yeah, good. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'll admit I've dated clients, and sometimes, I guess before I did this work, I had no idea who books an escort, and it can be very easy to have a judgment about that. And what I've learned is regular people book escorts for all sorts of reasons, and they're all valid. And so I've had a lot of wonderful connections. So this is Miso. Hey, darling boy. And they've enriched me. They've been really, really, really supportive, and they become like good friends and it's transactional, and they get that. And it's just a really fair exchange at the end of the day, energetically, as well as obviously in terms of like my worth, my sense of what I deserve for the transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and that leads pretty naturally into another question. Is there much of a market for genuine companionship that is just company without the shagging? Like, is there much out there for that?
Much less than what is sexual of nature, but I did have a client there for a few months with a disability. He had cerebral palsy, and he'd book me for the day, and we would play Scrabble. I'd cook him dinner. We went to Port Douglas, went shopping and ate food, and I mean, we watched movies and just hung out. I mean, it was sexual for maybe 30 minutes of the 8-hour booking, but I actually furnished his entire living room. We just had so much fun just doing regular stuff. But in this particular instance, he kind of had a belief that he could never have a girlfriend. So I gave him a girlfriend experience. We went out and we did things that couples would do. And that was the closest thing I'd probably had to like a relationship with a client, which was more companionship than sexual in nature.
Well, this is a question that I was going to lead into way later, but it just kind of leads in naturally now. Do you know that the NDIS was seriously contemplating funding sex work as a form of therapy? Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I think someone had told me that they were like, it hadn't gone through or something like this, but just with my experience, when you think about it, it is such a human need. It's not even just the sex, it's the intimacy, it's a female's touch, it's just spending time with a woman. And for some of these people with a disability, it is harder to get out there and date. And I know in this person's instance, he didn't want to go and meet somebody with a disability. He just wanted to date, you know, someone who he admired walking down the street kind of thing. And yeah, I really, really, really am in support of that. Because I know how much it meant to this particular individual.
Of course, like as you've observed, it's a human need. It's who we are.
Yeah.
You know, it says in Genesis, like Adam said, I was lonely. And God went, okay.
Billions of people on the planet for a reason.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I really believe in that. Mr. Carroll has indicated, there's so many of us out there that hate our jobs, so he's kind of a little bit jealous.
I know. When I told my family what I did, one of my brothers was like, I would do the same. If I was a chick, I would totally. I mean, a lot of guys say that they would do the same if they could. And I often get asked by men, what's the market like? Is there a market for men? And I don't know. I always say, I don't know, post an ad, find out. But yeah, it's certainly, I feel blessed. It's not the kind of industry you can stay in for a super long time, I don't think, because for two reasons. One is there is so much darkness. The amount of screening that I do and weeding through just really unconscious men to find the gems, the people that I genuinely want to exchange my time and energy with. So that does become quite of a burden at times. Just sort of trying to stay in my good, happy, healthy, bubbly space. But the other thing is, you know, raising a family and having relationships, it evidently would conflict with those sort of goals.
Yeah. Look, that has raised a number of questions, but obviously, you know, how did your family take it? Like, generally speaking, like, you know, what
yeah, right. That was an interesting conversation, because I was always struggling with money. And so mum and dad used to call me and say, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? And all of a sudden I was doing super okay. And I just cannot lie. It's not in my nature. It's impossible. So I eventually, when I realized, maybe after a month of escorting, I'm like, hey, this doesn't feel bad. I just want to keep doing it. I'm really rocking it. I'm feeling in my power. I just had to tell my family. So I remember I called my mum and she was on her way to golf. And I think she kind of was shocked and said, okay, I'm just going to call you when I get off the golf course, because I don't think you can talk on your mobile on the golf course or something. And then we spoke, and I didn't want her to tell dad, and then she did. And then apparently dad didn't talk for 24 hours, which he just went mute. So obviously a lot for them both to process. When I told my siblings, they were all kind of like not surprised, like, oh yeah, makes sense, cool. Told them, you know, like they were less shook about it. But one day my dad called me maybe a week later, and he was like, oh wait, this is so naughty to say, but he was like, I've thought of a way we can launder your money. And he was obviously watching too much Breaking Bad. And he called me with this cute idea, and I was like, that's sweet. Okay, I didn't just say that. And I'm not laundering money. All right, let's move on.
Yeah. You know, it's legal. You don't have to launder money. You know, and look,
no, exactly. It's more how much. Go on.
Look, I last week's interview, I know you were ridiculously busy and you can't, you didn't watch it, but look, if I can plug the interview, and it's my biggest rating interview so far, was with Bluey O'Gorman. He's a decorated police officer. He was the president of the police union during the Fitzroy inquiry. So that's that would have happened just around the time you were born. And fundamentally, it was an inquiry into police corruption. There were two things that were happening. And that was prostitution and gambling. And Bluey's basic thesis is, and I'm sure I pretty much got this right, is, okay, people disagreed with those things, but it's always going to happen. It's a moral issue. It's not actually a criminal justice law enforcement issue. There's no victim here. And the fact that people were making money out of it, and a lot of money, is what led to that. So, the police, some police were actually kind of like being threatened, like not just with money either, but it was like, well, you kind of should do this, and it's like, oh, okay. And so they ended up taking money from that. And when you have unpopular laws that are structured around morality rather than actual criminal justice issues, it kind of leads to corruption. So it's a bad thing. Like, bad laws
Totally
create bad situations. So it's something that could and should have been legalized. But all right, look, can you tell me what the industry is like? Well, actually, you've kind of done that. We'll roll into, can you tell me a funny work-related story?
Okay. I think I'm going to go with the spanker. I kind of have names for some of my clients. There are many, many, many fetishes. But I once had a client who booked me for 30 minutes, and I have a toy with a suede whip on the end. And he had spoken to me and prefaced, exactly how he wanted it to go down. He was going to spank me for 30 minutes, and we could talk about it. If it hurt too much, he would chill back. We did, and he actually set the timer on his phone, which I really respected, because often you get a lot of people just wanting to stay and like wanting extra time, And without needing to touch himself or me touch him at the end of the 30 minutes, he got his. And it was, for me, like one of the strangest bookings I've ever had. I don't know if that's a funny story. That's a bit strange, really. And I asked him, like, I'm just fascinated. Why spanking? What is this? Because I'm so interested in people's psychology when it comes to certain kinks and fetishes. I don't judge people. I genuinely am just like, what is this for you? I don't get it. Like, that for me is whatever. It doesn't turn me on. But he had an instance when he was a young boy, like a teenager, maybe like pubescent, like 13 or something, that ripe age. Some random girl at the beach asked him to spank her. And now that's a thing for him. Like, that's his biggest turn on. So I feel that maybe one day I will publish a book about case studies, obviously not naming names or anything like this, but I just find it super fascinating what gets people going. But also, I think what was funny about the story was he was very well timed. He started counting down from 10 to 1, and then,
kudos to him.
Timer went off.
Yeah. Well, see, that's one of the things, ironically, it's one of the things that drew me to the police, and there are a number of them, because I kind of wanted to understand myself, because I had this self-image of myself that had never really been tested. But I also knew that I didn't really know a lot about other human beings. And coppers are people watchers, and that's one of our things.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just you have to understand what is going on in the mind of that other person, because, sometimes it can mean like, oh, they're going to hurt me. It can be kind of like, unfortunately, we don't have a screening process. Like, you can turn up there and go, okay, this is going to go bad. And with a bit of experience, you can kind of tell, you can tell that pretty quickly. You've just had a compliment come up here. There's JDD has just indicated that you're a very beautiful lady, both inside and out. So I think that's very kind and very accurate. And if I can also add to that, actually, you're articulate, and I'm really, really enjoying this conversation. Look,
Thank you.
You're talking a lot about empowerment, and again, a lot of people, including me, candidly, kind of don't associate prostitution with the concept of empowerment. Can you discuss why you feel empowered about this role? And I'm going to ask a number of questions now, because they're all going to roll into each other. And also, you kind of see yourself as feminist, and because, and again, I totally accept that the definition of feminism is changing. Like, some of the people now that are feminists just aren't. They're weird, and third wave feminism and all this really, really weirdness. But I'll get you to talk about empowerment, define feminism as you kind of see it, and then tell me where you are sitting on that spectrum of feminism and how it kind of all works with that.
Well, okay, it's empowering for one, because the earning potential is insane. I never in my life felt so grounded and so secure. The surprising thing that's also come from this is you'd think maybe with the competition and all the girls out there with, you know, big fake boobs and like all the stuff going on. I mean, in fact, this girl I met when we went bungee jumping had a fake ass. I had never even seen that, only on the Kardashians. So that was interesting. But what I was getting at is how much the men worship me. I just always have felt so out, like I'm just a normal girl, and albeit quite bubbly, and you know, I've always been a people person, but the sense of worship that I get from my clients is quite lovely. It's beautiful. So I've learned to love my body more than ever before. I've learned to love myself more, because people, these clients, my repeat customers, they're very complimentary and flattering, and they really genuinely appreciate me, and it's just so lovely to get that. Furthermore, I just think in today's day and age, people are very liberal. So I have not told a single person, like everyone in my world knows what I do. When I fill in a medical form and it says, "What's your profession?" I say escort. Like whatever, I'll just talk about it. And people are really cool. I've genuinely just only felt celebrated from everyone in the community. They appreciate what I'm about. They appreciate my candidness. And I think it's interesting. People certainly enjoy watching what I get up to. So I guess that's the exhibitionist in me. I'm like, let's go, you know, go on. I put it out there on Instagram, and I'm not hiding anything. But yeah, no, generally speaking, I've just never felt better. I've never felt healthier. I've never felt happier or more secure in my whole entire life.
Look, one of the and because as part of the research for this, I started reading a lot of feminist takes on pornography, and you know, the good and the bad, and ironically, the most vehement anti-prostitution people I read when I was doing the stuff and the articles that were just really just damning the industry, and indicating that anyone involved must be, by definition, must be exploited. Like they kind of like this false consciousness idea, which is inherently part of Marxism and therefore part of feminism. I was saying, look, you know, even if you think that you're enjoying it, you're just not. But one good point, and I think, sorry, that's Codswallop. You know, this Marxist idea of false consciousness is just rubbish in my opinion. But they did make one good point, and got to give a little bit of contextual information to this. I was a sex abuse investigator for a little while, and I've arrested a couple of people for rape. Most of those circumstances were interfamilial, but there were a couple of jobs that were almost total strangers, or ones where people met socially, the girl got too intoxicated, and next thing they kind of wake up and find some just stuck this all over them, you know. But this feminist, this one good point that through all the diatribe they made, they said, well, look, if it's the case that it's okay to kind of sell yourself, then rape is no longer an offence in itself, because the concept of rape works around the idea that a woman's body is sacred, not just the consent issue, but her body and sexuality is something really, really close to the kind of to the human persona. It's part of who we are. So if the argument that it's purely transactional is true, then rape isn't an offence because the sexuality side of itself. It's like stealing a service. It would be like there's an offence called unlawful use of a motor vehicle, and how that came about is people are stealing cars, but part of the element of an offence of stealing a car is like you've got to keep it. Stealing something means you keep it and you use it for yourself, and then you kind of like you retain possession of it. There was a problem with joyriders. Like joyriders weren't doing this. They would just like take a car, take it for joyride, dump it. Well, technically speaking, they weren't stealing it, but the offence of unlawful use didn't exist at the time. And the feminist argument, the way I see it, and again, like I'm just kind of like, is like basically the prostitution argument is it's like an unlawful use of a vagina. There's no there's no sacredness or to it. And remembering this is a very secular argument. There was no religious side to this argument at all. I'd be really interested in your take on that.
My take is this: we all have different perceptions of reality. We all have different belief systems. We all literally filter the world in our own unique way. So what is damaging to one person isn't damaging to another. What is sacred to one person might not be sacred to another. And and I think I wrote about this in one of my blog posts. We need to be more embodied so that we can truly know what serves us. So hence, you know, yoga and meditation and things like this, or even just anything where we can drop into our own sense of well-being and be like, how do I feel, kimchi? So for me, I tune in, and as I've mentioned before, I've never been happier. And so if what I'm doing is so bad for my soul, I should know about it. I should be feeling that somewhere. And it's just not the case. So I would say people love to project their opinions and their beliefs onto others because that's their little safety net, their little bubble of comfort, you know. And that particular argument, I think, is something that's been constructed by somebody with a more narrow-minded worldview. Maybe they don't love sex.
Yeah, well, see, that's the real irony is, and again, like I'm not just getting, because you know I've got my own religious worldviews, and I'm really keen to find yours out. That's going to be my next question. Actually, tell me about your.
Yeah.
I've read your blogs. You clearly have a religious/spiritual worldview, and I'm really keen to explore that. But the people who are most vehement were the Marxists, were these atheist, well, you know, by their own definition, these atheist materialists. And when I say materialist, I say this to people, and I mean, you know, people who like shopping. No, in the philosophical sense of materialist, believing that there is only the material world, that is all there is. Like, you know, you're born, you're made up of atoms, you die, the end. There's no spiritual, there's no anything else.
Right.
Which I found really ironic. But I think
Yeah.
into this really strange idea of false consciousness, which is really central, because that's how the Marxists write off. It's like, well, anyone, so if you get a working class person back in the traditional days who says, actually, kind of, I'm not exploited. I like, you know, I've got these skill sets. I like working in a factory. I like working, being a ditch digger. And you know what? It's actually important being a sewage worker. I feel like I'm contributing. And being a plumber, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that was the profession my dad started off with. So how the Marxists would kind of like get around that is like, I know, no, false consciousness. And they say the same thing about any Indigenous people who kind of like say, well, actually, I mean, our country's not perfect. Like I spoke to Dr. Anthony Dillon, who's an academic. He goes, please don't frame me as Indigenous. He goes, I'm a person. I have Indigenous heritage. He goes, like, I don't do identity politics. So, which I found kind of cool. Like, and that's how people write off, you know, anyone that likes that, anyone who's like that goes against the narrative. But let's talk about your spiritual/religious worldviews. Tell me what.
Well, you know, as I mentioned, I was doing the vegan thing for a long time, and colon cleansing and fasting and I did like a 60-day juice fast. I mean, I was like really, and it was not just a diet thing, it was a biblical thing. Like I genuinely thought that what I was doing was bringing me closer to spirit, to source. And in that time, I was also sexually abstinent. Like I was really not interested in sleeping around. I mean, when I had partners, of course, I was sexual with them, but I was mixing with some people who really had some strong beliefs around how sacred sex is. And I kind of took that on and embodied that in that time of my life. And when I did my yoga teacher training, there's one of the niyamas is brahmacharya, which means it's something which a yogi lives by, which is sexual abstinence, or abstinence from glutton and worldly pleasure in a way. So I remember doing my yoga teacher training and I burst into tears. This was a few years ago when they said you've got these energetic cords with every person you ever had sex with. And I was like, oh, I've had sex with so many people. And that thought was so awful to me. But I guess where I'm at now is I see the work I'm doing as being a healing aid. I see what I do, who I am as a person. I have a lot of happiness and joy. And when I'm with my clients, I meet some men who are quite like rigid and blokey bloke sometimes. And in a sense, I've turned this pursuit into something of a spiritual like role for me, because I believe all we need to do in this world is shine our light. And I'm doing that in the work I do. I soften men and I really de-armor them. And of course, you know, when it comes to the actual sex, it's always safe. Like I would never do anything that compromised my own health. So yeah, I guess for me now, I've found new meaning in what I'm doing, and I've turned it still into something which fulfills me spiritually.
Wow. Look, yeah, that actually, there's so many things that are leaping in my mind, because I was going to, yeah, well, actually, we've had. I think I should note here that Terry Doyle has pointed out that what you're doing is the world's oldest profession, but he believes musician, and he's a musician, is the world's second oldest profession. Perhaps they're interlinked, Terry. I don't know. I'm not in a. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position. I know maybe there was music involved. There probably would have been partying involved as well. But the world's, look, I'm just going to make a quick observation, and just, you know, if you can comment, that's great. And if we can't, we'll just move on. But the world's oldest book is called The Epic of Gilgamesh, and I'm kind of intrigued with it. It's something I'd recommend anyone reading. It's a very simple story, but the narrative is actually really deep. And the way it works around is there's this king, Gilgamesh, and he meets this guy, Enkidu of Uruk, who's a wild man. But this wild man, and it's got shades of Adam and Eve in this. You can kind of almost feel it. This wild man gets civilized by a woman, and in fact, it specifically says that she's a prostitute. So the town went and got this prostitute and said, "Look, you know, we've tried everything else. How about we get a woman to civilize this dirtbag?" And I kind of think that it says something really deep. Like these stories, and I'm going to get a little bit Jordan Peterson here and a bit Jonathan Peugeot as well. These stories aren't just stories where they're trying to tell something. They're actually trying to look into human psychology and make observations about the human condition. And men are civilized by women. And if you think of the story, of Adam and Eve too, that's kind of like really interesting. She's not a harlot, despite, like, you know, some people kind of like say, "Oh, she's pictured as a harlot." She's not. But her job is she's the first conscious human being. She's the first one that takes the bite of the apple. So although Adam was created first, he wasn't conscious. So he was kind of an animal. He was kind of an animal, like, you know, a really high human being. But it was Eve that first took the bite of the apple and became truly conscious. The first truly conscious human being in human history, according to the biblical tradition, was a woman. And then her job after that was to bring out consciousness and intelligence in him. And that's the way it links in with what you're saying. Like I think that it's a pattern of human reality. I think that is the job of a woman, is to kind of civilize men.
Women are nurturing and tender and emotional, and men are aggressive at times, you know, with all that testosterone. And I do think that men need that woman's presence and touch. For sure.
It's, again, that's just part of who we are. So that's it's really interesting that way back
biological symbiosis, baby.
Yeah, way back in these really early stories, we have this recognition that women have these roles and men are kind of like. But again, anyone who reads Genesis and think Adam comes out looking good from that is like needs reading comprehension exercises. It's the women that come out looking good. Men come out looking like idiots. Right, but let's move on. What expected challenges have arisen as a result of your new lifestyle? Can we talk about that?
Challenges. Like I mentioned earlier, certainly in the screening process, the challenge of just not letting others disturb my happy, because you do interact with some pretty like shitty people sometimes. I I certainly would like to have a family and settle down, but like now I've really put it out there. Like I'm career woman mode for now, for the next, maybe I've sort of like 2 years is my goal. So that in and of itself is obviously like I'm shutting myself off from something that I do really want. With that said, I've been surprised by how many men still would date me. Like I had this belief like no one would date a working girl, but I've certainly not been short of suitors. And I'm not just talking clients, but genuinely lovely men who I've connected with who are really cool with what I do. So I guess that was something initially that I had a really strong belief system about, but it's turning out to be quite false.
That's that's kind of interesting, and I've got another question I want to follow on, but I've got one from the crowd, so we'll roll straight into that. Chris has asked, he congratulates you, kind of like, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he thinks it's pretty cool, obviously, that you're working with the disabled. He's asked, have you ever met with the family of any disabled people or anything like that to kind of like seal the circle?
Oh yeah, but it wasn't deliberate. I bumped into one of my clients. We're at a shopping center and we bumped into his sister. And I mean, this kind of segues into a different story, but I did have to end this relationship with this client because he was getting too emotionally invested, and basically he had led the sister to believe that I was his new partner, and it was just a bit strange for me to be caught in that. But no, I haven't. Oh, I also met his social worker, so I got very entangled in that person's world for a little while there. And the ethical thing for me at the end of the day was to actually end it with him because it was getting too enmeshed. But beyond that, I haven't met people's people.
And look, it must get complicated sometimes because, you know, you're always going to have...
It gets really complicated. I'm learning as time goes on that boundaries are so important. And given the nature of the job, you're sharing intimacy. Once you see somebody multiple times, you build a very real connection. You know, you do have a relationship, albeit not a traditional one. So there are times when I have to really assert, you are my client, like I really appreciate you as my client, and just kind of put that that wall back up. But yeah, I've lost a few clients because things have kind of like, because they have developed feelings for me. So in a way, I'm learning to be like, it's almost like chill back, don't be so good at your job, and having to be more professional, and yeah, something I'm still navigating.
Right. Yeah, you said that was going to lead into a story.
That was the story about I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah, I had with the client who our worlds became a little bit too enmeshed. He was spending a lot of money on me, and I learned that he didn't actually have much money to be spending. So I kind of had to cull it.
Okay. So look, have you ever felt judged or stigmatized because of this? Like, you know, have you ever had any flack?
No. So I've moved up to Cairns 4 years ago, and I think it was so good for me to do that, because to get away from my family and my roots in Melbourne meant that I could just be like whatever I want to be. It's almost like a fresh start, and I think I needed that at the time. So not in Cairns. However, I do believe that a lot of my old like family friends and mutual acquaintances in Melbourne, like some of my siblings' friends, have been like had things to say about it, not bad things, but so just sort of like, are her parents okay? Like people with genuine concern. And I know that this is something I'm treading water right now, trying to respect my mum and her network of friends who do have judgments. But I guess in my little happy bubble reality here in Cairns, I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, anyone who has a judgment is not, we're just not in alignment. So I don't need them in my life. I've got so many great friends and family, and I have not received anything like here in Cairns. I've just sort of been aware of some potentially awkward dynamics in Melbourne, more with the older, like my mum's generation.
Well, yeah, we've got, mate, we've got quite a few up here, and Tess has indicated that she finds it no surprise that that you'd have plenty of suitors, because she said, again, same sort of thing as Chris, that you're a very attractive lady, both inside and out. So you're getting a fair bit of love out there, mate.
Well, that's really nice.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Thank you.
But it leads logically onto another couple of questions. So, you know, you've got fur babies, but I understand you're keen to have human ones too.
Check him out on the couch over there, so cute. And this guy.
Let's do it. Crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
So, you know, you are keen to have human ones. So what would you look for in a husband? And, you know, how would you raise your kids? Like, would they know about what you did in the past and all that sort of stuff? Like,
yeah, it's not actually something I've even really thought about all that much, probably because I think what I value so much in life is open-mindedness and heart-centric relating. So I just don't think that we should judge people. If something works for them and if they're providing a real service and their intention stems from a good place, I don't think you should be ashamed. I'm not ashamed in the slightest. So I probably would, when my children are mature enough, I would probably tell them. And also, it's just an industry that needs lifting of the veil, so to speak, because it's so taboo. And I was having a conversation with a friend, actually, okay, here I go on a tangent, about the porn industry, which really is sick and twisted. And there's so much just awful stuff on the internet. So if I can talk about the realness of escorting and like the actual like tenderness and, you know, like I was saying, the delivering of I think what is a healing service, it's like a whole new conversation, which is way nicer, way more relatable and much less twisted, you know. But back to your question, looking for in a man, open-mindedness, depth, and the ability to do self-inquiry. Someone who is on a growth path. That's what I'm very attracted to.
Right. So, hang on. We'll just bring that up. Oh my gosh, it's not quite going mad, but no, we're getting quite a bit of interest on here. So it's really, really cool. Do you have an exit plan? And if so, what is it?
Kind of, yeah. Well, I have so many ideas. I'm in such a fun, creative space right now. So certainly the blogging and the podcasting and just like building a name for myself via Steffi Raw. I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity to speak on the issue, write a book. Like I've always wanted to be a published author, and I just never knew what the topic would be, but I feel like this really inspires me. There's also the opportunity to mentor women in the industry because, like I've mentioned before, I've wanted to connect with somebody who I could really relate with, someone who was quite in touch with themselves and had done a lot of the inner work and wasn't working out of a need to support a habit or from basically out of a trauma response, that someone who was like doing it from a place of real agency. And I just think that there's a real need for somebody to help women have more self-respect in the industry and to really like value themselves a lot more. Yeah.
You know, to be candid, all of my experience with sex workers has been people who are coming from addiction, trauma, you know, dirtbag boyfriends who kind of forced them into it.
Yeah.
I've never had a conversation like this, and I've actually had a lot of conversations with sex workers over the years. And you know, people that do that sort of stuff. Look, I'm kind of interested. Look, I know it is a tangent, and I promise we won't dive too deep into it. But you know, I would normally associate the sex industry with porn, and clearly you have a deep disapproval of the porn industry. Why? Like, what's the distinction in your mind? What's going on there? I want to dive into that a little bit, if that's okay.
I guess what's portrayed you can Google anything. So these days people are just like getting really desensitized to just really vanilla sex, or anything that's candid. People just want to see things that are more and more shocking. So I have watched a few documentaries and researched it a bit, and there's basically if women do get into the porn industry, they're getting coerced into doing things that are really like intense. I don't want to go too deep into it, but yeah, I mean, I know that there's a lot of people also being taken advantage of as a sex worker, as an escort. But yeah, I just think that there's a lot of smut on the internet, whereas with the escorting, that all happens behind closed doors, and it comes down to the individual, how they want to hold space, like when they're with a client. And when something is like with a team of people being directed and it's all about the views, then it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And I just think it's all about the shock factor now.
Yeah, and look, I think there's a fair bit in that. It's actually not about the sex; it's more of a power thing. You know, and it's about people paying money to watch the humiliation of other human beings, which is something that you know, which is.
As a woman, when I have watched porn, I cringe because I can tell when a woman is faking it and is in pain and embarrassed, and it's written all over their face. And I've only seen a couple of things on the internet where I was like, oh, she's genuinely loving that right now. Like, this is a really real experience. But pretty much everything I've ever seen has been acting, and I think it's geared towards the male mind of, like, I don't know what is hot and the trending fetish.
I can kind of, I do. I've never been big on porn. Like, I'm not going to say I've never looked at porn. I mean, when I was a 14-year-old boy. But no, I do get what you kind of say with that, and I think
it makes me feel bad on the inside when I watch it. Like, it just doesn't feel. I'm not going to have good dreams at night if I was to watch porn. You know what I'm saying? It leaves a weird imprint on me.
Most of the porn that I was, and again, I come from, because I'm nearly 50 now, it actually wasn't penetrative sex. It was like Playboy and Penthouse and stuff like that. So it was pictures of nude hot girls, you know what I mean? That you could project kind of anything that you wanted onto. It's like, you know, maybe one day I could go out with the kind of worship that you get from your clients. It's kind of, that's what we did as young fellas, like looking at which is these ridiculously beautiful women who back in the 80s didn't have fake butts. But
that's a new thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. How weird is that? Like, a fake bottom? Like,
when I saw one in reality for the first time, I was like, it was evidently fake, you know? Like, I asked her, I'm like, is your ass fake? And yeah. But it's weird that people are okay to look so fake. It's a whole nother rabbit hole. I mean, I'll admit I've had Botox and filler. I actually love it. It's like best thing ever. Says me, who I'm like, don't do fake. But yeah, sometimes it gets just really like in your face, you know, the whole big boobs and big butt thing.
Well, arguably, there is a distinction between enhancement and kind of fakeness too. But so you just come out and say, "Is your ass fake?" Like, is that a fake butt?
Yeah, it was very large, you know, like disproportionately large to her body. So I was just going off of a limb.
Oh, that is funny.
I don't have much of a filter, Matt.
Yeah, clearly. But hey, look, any unexpected perks of the job?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the wonderful relationships and connections that I've made with my regular clients who, you know, even though there might be an age gap or a disability or various factors which mean that in real life I wouldn't be drawn to them as a life partner. With the men who do see me regularly, it is a beautiful exchange. And I guess I just never knew what does it entail? What does escorting entail? Who do I meet? And are they good people? The other perk, like I also mentioned, was coming out and rather than being condemned, literally being celebrated. Like, people just messaging me left, right, and center, just saying, I love how authentically you're showing up. And I think people appreciate just realness. So, you know, you can feel it when someone isn't putting a mask on. So it's been surprising in that, like a beautiful surprise in that sense.
So look, with the makeup of industry, how many, like just proportionally, like, you know, you can give a ratio idea. How many women do you think are kind of like in there for exploitation because they're being exploited, or that, you know, there's some sort of trauma or stuff going on? Like, you know, what would be the proportion, do you think?
Honestly, it's too hard for me to say because I haven't met very many. I've seen a lot of their profiles and like I can only like judge a picture, you know, but like from the couple of girls that I've spoken to, I'd say that they both had issues. Yeah, it's I can't actually say, but I'm going to guess a high proportion.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
And based on conversations with clients, I'm always curious about their experiences, you know, trying to connect with an escort, because some clients really do want to have an ongoing relationship. So I'm always curious to know, like, how has it gone in the past with women that you've met? And yeah, you hear some pretty like crazy stories.
Look, this is we're over time. I hope. Look, we seem to be getting a fair bit of love. So if it's okay, we'll kind of keep going for a little while. But
yeah,
what has your job made you cynical about masculinity and monogamy and any of those kinds of things? And like, what?
I'm not gonna lie, there's certainly been moments where I'm like, I hate men, but that's on a shit day when I just have had some really rude inquiries. People just with really very little respect. The other thing is, and this is a lesson I've learned, is there's people out there who get off on making a booking, making an inquiry, and then just not showing or just texting back and forth, and they're like energy vampires. Like really, they just get off on talking to you, but they have no intention of ever honoring your time. So I've become really, I guess, strict in how I handle that with, you know, like taking a deposit. If somebody is not, if somebody's like trying to converse with me and it's like going nowhere, I just block and delete because I can smell an energy vampire a mile off. So I've probably blocked thousands of numbers at this stage. And I try to just, only give my attention to the inquiries which feel good to me. People, you know, you'll get an inquiry like, hey, my name is this, I'm in town for a few days, you look so gorgeous in your ad, I would love to spend an hour with you, how much, blah, blah, blah. Like they're very straight to the point and very like, they're not time wasters about it. And then you just get other people, send me a picture of this. Like it's like a demand, you know? So sometimes I just get these crazy messages that I just want to like punch the person through the phone, but I don't, I just block them and shake it off.
What about?
I forget what the original question was. Did I answer
it's okay. You've answered it, and I asked 3 questions at once. So like, it's not you, it's me.
Okay.
My poor interviewing skills. But what about monogamy? Like, what's your kind of take on that?
My take is men cheat. And the reason why men cheat is there's a lack of communication in the relationship for the most part. So they have this need that isn't being met. They don't know how to communicate it with their partner. And I'm pretty open. So I like the idea of a monogamous relationship, but I also think that if I was with somebody for 25 years and things were really stale and we wanted to invite someone into the bedroom for a threesome or just to do something that was like reinvigorating for the sex life of the relationship, I would definitely be open to it. I'd be okay with it. Like I do get a lot of couples that book me. And in all honesty, when I witness these couples together, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are really in love. And I'm the present and I'm so honored to be here right now with you guys. And I admire that openness in a relationship. But I don't like the idea of like being polyamorous and having multiple lovers. That just gets too complicated for me.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, that's very Bettina Ardette. She's the there's this amazing. Well, she's an old school feminist, but the new school feminists loathe her, and she's a sexual psychologist. I think you'd really like her work. And mate, some of the things that she says are pretty much in line with what you do. I'll send you some of the hyperlinks to her work.
Yeah.
I think she was nominated for an Australia Award, and it was Kerry O'Brien or some other douchebag went nuts and said, "Oh, I'll never share the stage with her. She's evil." She's not. She just kind of said what you just kind of said. That men.
Right.
I
So
mean,
Kerry would hate me. For saying we'd have some beef.
well, I mean, the kind of idea. What she kind of says is, she didn't say men are beasts, and you know, I'm paraphrasing here, and this is just, and I haven't read all of her work, so if someone is more familiar with her work and says, no, Matt, this is not what she said, there's this article, that's fine, I'm really happy to be kind of fixed up. But she says, look, you know, men and women approach sex very differently, and they have kind of like, they have different views of it. Like, men see it as a form of validation, and, you know, they really do associate it, believe it or not, although, you know, we do seek sex, they kind of do associate it with love deeply. Kind of not get
feeling wanted and needed.
Yeah. If they're kind of, if
I've heard that from my clients.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, well, that's what the psychologist kind of says too. But does also kind of says, she, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but she kind of says, well, you know, you got to understand this about women. It's like they don't come out at the same way you do. It's your job to make them receptive. Like, you're a man, go and make them kind of receptive. But she also talks about the links of, anyway, kind of going off. I'm going off tangent. You told me I could. I'll send you the links. I think you'd genuinely be interested. But look, we might actually, we've just got some people that said, I think communication is the key. And yes, polyamory, which I think we've covered off on there, Mel. Mr. Carroll has asked, are you working towards a goal money-wise to enter in a new phase of your life, or not really, or you're just kind of taking it as it comes?
I have a goal. So I have a slight mortgage on the house I have now, and I want to pay it off within 3 years. So just be fully mortgage-free. That's the goal. And then maybe continue to work for a little bit and get some funds to catapult me into something else. I don't know. But the exit strategy at this point is still is quite loose and vague. But I have good faith. I've got a lot that's, like I said, coming through me right now. So I'm just going to keep building on that. Great.
Well, look, on that note, we might actually kind of like go into wrap it up. Mate, is there anything else besides your blogging? We've kind of advertised that. If anyone is keen for your services, how do they find you?
Yeah, if you want to book me, my working name is Amber Gold, and you can find me on Scarlet Blue. So if you just type in on Google, Amber Gold, Scarlet Blue, my ad will come up. And hopefully you're not a creep and I decide to take your booking, because I can be pretty discerning.
Yes, clearly. And well, you know, if you're in the position to be so, that's fantastic. And I'm going to give you a bit of a moment to give a message. Any particular message you'd like to give to the good listeners of Northern Vibe?
Yeah. I really believe that we need to drop judgment, and judgment just separates all of us, right? So when we have a strong belief system or strong worldview, we're following some rule book or some religious text or what have you, it's all separation. So I just think we've entered into this age of being much more liberal and open and accepting. So whatever floats someone's boat, whatever makes them shine in this world, support that. And at the end of the day, I think everyone just needs to be happy for one another's happy, because then we can spread that happiness. So that's my closing message.
Well, great. Look, thanks very much for that. So everybody out there, you've got to like and share. This has been an excellent interview. We really, really need you to like and share it. If you've got other platforms, if you've got any other social media, please make sure that you do put this out. As you well know, Northern Vibe, we don't do any paid promotions. We're almost at 30,000 people for reach, and last week's interview is over 5,000, and we're getting that just from you, just from your likes and shares. So the support that you're giving Northern Vibe is not going unnoticed or unappreciated, but we can't keep going without that. So please like and share. Serious as cancer, and if you haven't already, follow Northern Vibe. I'm kind of considering talking to Steph about maybe because I've got, as you followers of Northern Vibe will know, I've got Ian McLean coming on as a presenter as soon as he can get his workload through. So we're going to have a number of presenters under the umbrella of Northern Vibe, and I'm thinking we may have just found someone that might be pretty good. I'll see if I can twist her arm to get her to come on. Next week, I have another really interesting interview. It's called There and Back Again. Now, I'm speaking to Jeremy Luke Bate. He is a man who went from a man who went to a woman and then has come back again. So that's why it's There and Back Again. He's a detransition former transsexual. He has some really, really interesting takes on the current narrative. So I'm not going to spoil it now. The only qualification I've got to make is, unfortunately, he's not available on Monday. So it's a pre-recorded interview. I've already done it, but I'll be putting it out next Monday. It's great. It's going to be so interesting. He's a really, really deep guy and a deep thinker. And his, the experiences that he's been through has given him a very, very unique perspective. Perhaps it's almost as unique as my excellent guest tonight. So look, thank you very much to all the listeners out there at Northern Vibe. Seriously, your support, guys, has been excellent. Thank you to all the other Facebook sites that are supporting us.